Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Hare Krishna. We're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 2, entitled Remembrance of Lord Krishna, Text 30. Today is July 10th, 2022. Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narotamam devim sarasvatim vyasam tato jayamudiraya. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should first offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead Narayan, to Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, and to Mother Sarasvati, the goddess of learning, and to Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta Prayeshu Bhadreshu Nicham Bhagavata Seveya Bhagavat Utamashloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 2, Text 30. Prayuktan Ojarajena Maina Kamarupina Lilaya Vyanudat Tan Bala Kridanakan Eva Prayuktan Bojarajena Maina Kamarupina Lilaya Vyanudat Tamstan Bala Kridanakan Eva Prayuktan Bojarajena Maina Kamarupina Lilaya Vyanudat Tamstan Balakridanakan Iva Prayuktan Bojarajena Maina Kamarupina Lilaya Vyanudat Tamstan Balakridanakan Iva Prayuktan Bojarajena Maina Kamarupina Lilaya Vyanudat Tamstan Balakridanakan Iva
Prayuktan Bojarajena Mayina
Kamarupina
Lilaya Vyanudat Tamstan Balakridanakan
Iva Okay, Hare Krishna. We'll go to the word for word. Prayuktan. Engaged. Bojarajena. By King Kamsa. Maina. Great wizards. Kamarupina. Who could assume any form they liked. Lilaya. In the course of the pastimes. Vyanudat. Killed. Tan. Them. Tan. As they came there. Bala. The child. Kridanakan. Dolls. Eva. Like that. Translation. The great wizards who were able to assume any form were engaged by the king of Bojakamsa to kill Krishna. But in the course of his pastimes, the Lord killed them as easily as a child breaks dolls. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The atheist Kamsa wanted to kill Krishna just after his birth. He failed to do so, but later on he got information that Krishna was living in Vrindavan at the house of Nanda Maharaj. He therefore engaged many wizards who could perform wonderful acts and assume any form they liked. All of them appeared before the child lord in various forms, like Aga, Baka, Putana, Shakata, Trinavarta, Denuka, and Gardaba. And they tried to kill the Lord at every opportunity. But one after another, all of them were killed by the Lord as if he were only playing with dolls. Children play with toy lions, elephants, boars, and many similar dolls, which are broken by the children in the course of their playing with them. Before the Almighty Lord, any powerful living being is just like a toy lion in the hands of a playing child. No one can excel God in any capacity, and therefore no one can be equal to or greater than him, nor can anyone attain the stage of equality with God by any kind of endeavor. Jnana, yoga, and bhakti are three recognized processes of spiritual realization. The perfection of such processes can lead one to the desired goal of life and spiritual value, but that does not mean that one can attain a perfection equal to the Lord's by such endeavors. The Lord is the Lord at every stage. When he was playing just like a child on the lap of his mother, Yashoda Mai, or just like a coward boy with his transcendental friends, he continued to remain God without the slightest diminution of his six opulences. Thus, he is always unrivaled. Om Gyanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshuranmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayamupa Kadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Uta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Saganaraganatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitan Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Garange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpata Yubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanan Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 3 Chapter 2 Text 30 Prayuktan Bojarajena Maina Kamarupina Lilaya Vyanudatam Stan Bala Kridana Kaniva. The great wizards who were able to assume any form were engaged by the king of Bojakamsa to kill Krishna, but in the course of his pastimes, the Lord killed them as easily as a child breaks dolls. Hare Krishna. Okay, all right. So right here in the first words of the translation, we see this term, the great wizards. All right, so this, like these are like living entities who has, let's call it mystic power, right? I think it's a term these days to be a shapeshifter. It's a thing, like shapeshifter, like that. Okay, so these exist here in the Vedic literature. Shapeshifting can assume any form, and the purport Prabhupada describes how Kamsa engaged many wizards who could perform wonderful acts and assume any form they like. All right, so this kind of whole idea of like, let's call it mystic power. It's like a thing. It's a thing, and yeah, to be able to do these mystical things or fly or disappear and like that. And so, all right, so whether it's acquiring cars or money or positions in society or acquiring knowledge or acquiring mystic powers. Um, and these things do exist, these mystic powers. It's quite a study. So sometimes Prabhupada delineates in great detail the 8 types of mystic power achieved through different types of yoga process. I say yoga process, but really essentially yoga means bhakti yoga. And I'm getting, that's kind of like the point here. Or whether we talk about jnana yoga, mystic yoga, hatha yoga, karma yoga, raja yoga. Prabhupada emphasizes yoga actually means bhakti yoga. And all the types of yoga are meant to lead to the real yoga, bhakti yoga to connect, yukta, the self connecting with itself, in self-realization, the self turning towards Krishna in a spirit of devotion. That's actually what all the yogas are meant for. But through some process of yoga, and so one can get mystic powers, and there's different ways, like a magician, like that. And okay, and to become smaller than the smallest, heavier than the heaviest, lighter, and it can create things. Basically, entering into different material dimensions, and you could go to some forest in the Himalayas and pick a mango or something like that and bring it here in an instant, like that. And so, of course, there's magic tricks, but then there's actual mystic powers. So the idea is like actually for a devotee, it's not particularly interesting in itself. It's important because I can look in my heart and see it's what's described. Anya Bilashita Sunya. Jnana karma dinavritam anukuli Krishna shilanam bhakti uttama. That like to progress on this path, that to get rid, to eliminate from our heart weeds of karma or jnana. Karma, like I want to have some material progress and advancement, or I want to collect knowledge. That's been a struggle for me, because we get such knowledge here that even this, we can use the knowledge to be superior to others, and that becomes a weed. That's different than using knowledge to deepen our empathy and compassion for the suffering of ourselves and others, and using that knowledge to actually support people to relieve themselves from the suffering, facilitate their self-realization. And so similarly with mystic powers, right? Like fantasies of mystic power. And so it's described in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Mukti Mukti Siddhikami, Sakali Ashanta, that as long as we have any desire for mystic to be like a great wizard or like that, it can control the elements and like that. Mystic powers or material enjoyment or even wanting liberation, any desire like that, we will not be peaceful. We will not be peaceful. And Krishna Bhakta Nishkama Ata Eva Shanta. And Prabhupada sometimes Prabhupada describes like to desire devotional service. It's not really a desire because it's not material. Any material desire will agitate our mind. It'll agitate our minds and senses and make us disturbed. And so like to desire to serve Krishna, it's like the natural expression of the soul. So that's why it's intense and it's enthusiastic, but it just brings us to deeper and deeper peace. Ata Eva Shanta. So only the Krishna Bhakta, the pure Krishna Bhakta, is truly peaceful. And so, so the word used here for the great wizards is Mayina, great wizards. Okay, means like one can create illusions, shapeshift, and like that. Of course, we're familiar with the term Maya. So, so these are, Maya will dangle shiny things. Okay, to well, this whole thing of like what Maya is, there can be complexities, but we can think of two basic functions of Maya. One, let's call it Jiva Maya, to put us into illusion, and the other is like Guna Maya, meaning like the very stuff of material energy. It's made of Maya, and Maya is a force. It's Maya are modes of nature, the three modes, Sattva, Rajas, Tamas, right? It's like, it's the very stuff of material nature. It's what everything's made of in the material world. And it's also a way to categorize material nature. So like, let's say there's like a manufacturing company, an industry, and a manufacturing company. All right, so they have a branch that does advertising. Okay, so let's call it Jiva Maya. And so the advertising, like, so the goal of the advertising department is to convince people, you don't want this, you need this. Like whatever the trinket, whatever the widget they're selling, you know, however much it's an unnecessary necessity. Like, for you to feel secure, you need this insurance policy. For you to be happy, for you to be peaceful, for you to be fulfilled, for you to keep up with the Joneses. Yeah, you need this. Okay. Oh yeah, I do. I didn't realize it, but I do. Okay, so that's one function of Maya. Right? So like to convince us, yeah, I want those, and I want that power. I want that shiny thing. I like that. Okay. And then the company also has a manufacturing department where then they actually manufacture the widget, they manufacture the trinket, they manufacture the thing. Okay, so that's another function of Maya. Call it guna Maya. That like everything is made of Maya. Okay, so sometimes Prabhupada describes the avaranat mika shakti. That's the potency of Maya, where we get covered. We get covered in the suffering, disturbing material condition. We think we're happy. We think we're doing good. Okay. The example is like the pig in mud eating slop. Oh, what a terrible life. Pig in mud eating slop. Oh, but the pig's very happy. Okay. But so we have our version of wallowing in mud, eating slop, thinking, no, I'm doing very good. So then we're not going to get intense. Tivrena bhakti yogena yajita pushakara. Right? We're not getting intense to free ourselves from Maya like that. And then another function of Maya is what's called the throwing potency, right? To throw us into the whole illusory make-believe game, the whole virtual reality, to throw us in, and then to convince us that this is great, I'm doing fine here. Why would I want to get out of this place? So it's described, actually, the very, like Bhagavad Gita has 700 verses, and the very last verse, chapter 18, text 78, Yatra Yogeshvara Krishno, Yatra Partha Danoradara, Tatra Shri Vijaya Bhutir, Dhruva Nitir Matir Mama. So that's Sanjaya speaking, and Sanjaya saying, wherever there's Krishna, the master of all mystics, okay, and wherever there's Arjuna, the supreme archer, there will certainly be extraordinary power, opulence, morality, and victory. So a devotee has no interest in mystic powers, and the devotee is the greatest mystic because he's connected in loving devotional service with the supreme mystic, with the master of all mystic powers, the master of all mystic powers, Sri Krishna. So, yeah. So that's it. Once, but someone asked, maybe it was India or something, like the Prabhupada was asked, do you have mystic powers? So Prabhupada pointed to the enthusiastic devotees. He said, this is my mystic power. Because the idea is because, like, if a pure devotee shows mystic power, then people could get confused that that's the goal. But the actual goal is transformation of heart. The actual goal is transformation of consciousness. To go from whatever, or greedy, lusty self-deception to actually soft-hearted, sincere, honest servant of Krishna. That's the goal. That's the real mystic potency. And that's the essence. Okay, I mean, maybe other mystic potencies can serve that, just like karma can serve that. It's described in the Bhagavatam. Vasudevi Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Pravijita Janiyat Yashu Vairagam Gyanam Chayada Hetuka. By performing devotional service, one naturally gets knowledge and detachment from the material world. And as we know, this is not a world rejecting philosophy. It's a very world embracing philosophy and practice, very world embracing. Anukuyasya sankalpa patikuyasya parjana. To accept everything that's favorable for Krishna service, reject anything that's not favorable. And to the extent that we cultivate realization to accept everything, whether it's this body, this mind, this computer, this car, this relationship, this family, we accept it for Krishna service, using the Krishna service, then it's no longer Mahamaya, then it's yoga. That's practically how we spiritualize the world. Not through some self-absorbed trying to get attention through some woo sort of mystic thing and call it spiritual, but actually learning the art and science, how to use everything in Krishna's service. That's like a grounded way to spiritualize the world. Smartavya Satatam Vishnu, Vismartavya Najatuche. So that's the ultimate. Always remember Krishna, never forget Krishna. All other regulative principles, all other rules are meant to serve that essential rule. Always remember Krishna, never forget Krishna. So we can see here, so these great wizards, very, very powerful, great wizards. Right, but they were missing the point. They were missing the point. There's a text in the Brahma Samhita. Yesterday we were discussing Brahma Samhita. This is a book it's a book in English. It's a Sanskrit book sung by Lord Brahma at the dawn of creation, and Srila Bhaktisiddhanta translated it and gave purports in English. And it's the one book from Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Srila Prabhupada directly gave us. And it's got, I think, like 62 verses. And there's 27 verses 29 to 55, that all end with Govinda Mari Pusham Tamaham Bhajami. And text 33 relates to what we're talking about here. So Lord Brahma says, Pantastu Koti Satavatsara Sampragam Yo Vayor Tapi Manasam Muni Pungavanam Sopyastya Prabhada Simnyari Chincha Tattve Govinda Mari Pusham Tamaham Bhajami. I feel some inspiration to Then actually that was text 34. So I'll read the translation from Bhaktisiddhanta. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, only the tip of the toe of whose lotus feet is approached by the yogis who aspire after the transcendental and betake themselves to pranayam by drilling the respiration, or by the jnanis who try to find out the non-differentiated Brahman by the process of elimination of the mundane extending over thousands of millions of years. Right. So Lord Brahma speaking in Bhaktisiddhanta's amazing English there. So Lord Brahma speaking about how, so the yogis could, even sincere yogis could meditate for millions of lifetimes, and jnanis for billions they could do their study like that for millions of lifetimes. And if they're successful, then they'll get a glimpse of the radiance from the toenails of Krishna. Okay, right. So that's where I like Mother Yashoda and the cowherd boys. Srila Prabhupada, far more spiritually advanced than these yogis and the jnanis. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Bahunam Janmanamante, Ganavan Mam Prapadyante, Vasudeva Saramiti, Samahatma Sudurlabha. Krishna talks. He talks about all the paths. Bhagavad Gita is the source book for all the paths. And so, and so he says, so Krishna is, so like if one is sincere on the path of Gyan, then after many, many lifetimes, they'll come to this bhakti, they'll come to this devotional service. And so Prabhupada's stressing in the purport, okay, so there's all these mystic wizards with so much power. And then the stress in Uddhava's text and in Prabhupada's purport. But in the course of his pastimes, the Lord killed them as easily as a child breaks dolls. Similarly in the purport, one after another, all of them were killed by the Lord as if he were only playing with dolls. Okay, so it means like, okay, so these powerful, non-devotional entities sent by Kamsa. So we could think, well, I guess Krishna really needed to spend some time in the gym to get himself in shape to be able. No, didn't need to do that. Well, Krishna must have done, some deep yoga meditation in order to be able to defeat these mystic wizards. No. Oh, okay. Well, Krishna, he probably studied so many books to figure out. No, they're just there. It's a baby, very, very natural. He takes care of Putana, takes care of the Dhanukasura demon, the Trinavarta demon. So it's like a characteristic of God. He's full in all his potencies all the time. Okay. Prabhupada writes towards the end of the purport, when he was playing just like a child on the lap of his mother Yashoda Mai, or just like a coward boy with his transcendental friends, he continued to remain God without the slightest diminution of his six opulences. Thus, he is always unrivaled. He didn't need to develop his strength or his powers, always full with all the six opulences, whether in the dungeon of Kamsa or in the lap of Mother Yashoda, or playing in the fields with the cowherd boys. And so, actually, Prabhupada will sometimes describe, Prabhupada had a German godbrother who, his initiated name became Sadhananda Maharaj. I think his name was Schultz or something. Well, the name's there somewhere in Prabhupada's teaching. But anyhow, so as many Germans, they were, but even going back then, they were interested in the Vedas. He was interested in the Vedas, and so Prabhupada said about his godbrother. So he could see, so the Vedas, or we could say even like any genuine spiritual path has all of these tracks. We could see it in Christianity, in Judaism, in Buddhism, in Islam. There's a track of, let's call it karma, the track of karma, whereas it means like, be good and you'll enjoy like anything in heaven. And there's a track of jnana, or let's call it the mystic approach, the idea of like, the idea isn't to enjoy, the idea is to merge. Like the mystical Kabbalistic branches of Judaism, or the Sufis in Islam, or the you got that in branches of Christianity, and certainly in Buddhism, and the idea is to like a mystical merging into the oneness, like that. So you'll see that, you'll see that path. It's certainly there in the Vedas. And so this godbrother Prabhupada was telling Prabhupada that he could see that all those mystic powers that are described, like in the Vedas, he could see that this is maybe even in the 1920s or 30s, that science is pretty much doing it, maybe in a grosser form, with the idea of okay, you can become light and fly in the sky. Okay, well now there's these airplanes. Oh, okay, well, okay, you can become smaller than a subatomic part. Okay, well, with these microscopes, so all the mystic power, they're being imitated by science. So he said, like in one sense, they're material, they're not so. And then like that analysis moved him to see how the real thing is bhakti. So let me get a real teacher to a real guru, a real teacher. And that's yes, Yari Dekatari Kai Krishna Pradesh, Amaraga Guru Hanatari Dev. Kiba Vipra Kiba Nyasi, Sudra Kani Nai, Ye Krishna Tattva Veda, say Guru Hai. Real guru is one who's addicted to Krishna. Real guru is one who's addicted to Krishna. So Krishna led him to Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Sarasvati. And so, so this is an important element of Krishna's greatness, right? To show, to lift Govardhan Hill, to defeat these demons. He doesn't need to struggle, right? He doesn't need to struggle. You can look like, say, great, powerful demigods like Lord Brahma. Okay, they go through great penance and austerity, and then he can create a universe. It's wonderful. Same time for as you were saying yesterday, for Krishna in his sleep, right? We were talking about the yoga nidra, yakar narnava jale banjatisma yoga nidram anantam jagaranda salom kupa dara shakti avalambya param svamorti jagat svamorti. Govinda Mani Purusham Tamba Hambajami, just in his sleep. But Prabhupada describes that yoga nidra. It's like the yogis, they're kind of, they have their eyes half closed and they're in like a trance. That's like, the source of that is Vishnu sleeping, and he emanates the universe, the universes in his sleep. Okay, and in Prabhupada's class yesterday, then you emphasize the point that, okay, all right, so that's like, all in reverence of God, but then Krishna just like you were, I'll borrow your analogy from yesterday, just like a child, in kindergarten, just say, oh, it's my teacher and I'm the center. But no, actually the teacher has a life separate from teaching the kindergarten. So Krishna has his pastimes, and just with a fragment of the fragment of himself. Atava 19 Kim Getena Tavarjuna Vishtabhyamidam Krishna Ekam Sen Stito Jagat. Krishna says to Arjuna, know that all these mighty, beautiful, and glorious creations, they spring from but a spark of my splendor, just from an expansion that becomes the Mahavishnu, an expansion of Mahavishnu becomes Garbhodaksha Vishnu, expansion of Garbhodaksha Vishnu becomes Akshiradaksha Vishnu, in our heart, like that. Okay. So the microcosmic super soul, the macrocosmic super soul, and the metacosmic super soul, like that. So Krishna, without any special meditation or working out or studying, he has all these powers. And so Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, one who gets my greatness will naturally worship me and serve me with devotion. That's the first of the seed verses of Bhagavad Gita. Aham sarvasya prabhavo vata sarvam pravartate iti matva bhajate mam buddha bhava samandita. Says that one. So that's why, to develop that very personal relationship with Krishna, or let's say to reveal the soul's natural, very personal, intimate connection with Krishna. Like we're hearing in this chapter, the cowherd boys, the gopis, Mother Yashoda, the trees and the plants, and the river Yamuna. So they're so much loving Krishna that they're forgetting his power, glory, and greatness, his awesomeness. Right. So that's different than our forgetting Krishna's power and greatness and awesomeness. Our forgetting is a symptom of forgetting our original nature and letting our original nature become covered, because I was in the purport you read yesterday. Yes. that or no, the day before when Yogeshwar Prabhu gave class. So text 28, the last line of the purport, everyone loved Krishna. He was the life and soul of everyone, including the animals, the cows, and the calves. So material life means I want to be the life and soul of everyone. Okay. So our forgetfulness of God's greatness is because I want to be the greatest. I want to be the greatest. Okay. So that's different than the residents of Vrindavan. Their forgetfulness of Krishna's greatness is because they're deeply remembering who they are as servants of Krishna, so deeply that their love is increased when they go into Yoga Maya forgetfulness. Yoga Maya forgetfulness. So to approach that sort of very intimate relationship with Sri Krishna, Bhagavan, Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then it means we approach Krishna and serve Krishna in a mood of awe and reverence. Even Prabhupada described, even if one's service is to worship the Sri Radha Krishna deity, then one does it in sadhana bhakti, in the mood of Dwarka, in the mood of Rukmini, Dwarkadish. So yeah, so Lord Rishabhadev, it's part of the Bhagavatam. Prabhupada speaks on a lot Rishabhadev's teachings to his son, particularly his very first verse. Nayam deho deham bhajam nriloke kastam kaman arhete vid pujame tapo divyam putrati ina sattvam shudyadhyasman brahma sakyam tura. So he's talking to his sons, 100 sons headed by Bharat. And actually, this planet became known as Bharat Varsh because of that son of Rishabhadev. Some of Rishabhadev's sons became mystics, some became devotees, like that. And so he says, so in this human form, don't settle for the type of enjoyment that's available to the stool eaters, the hogs, the dogs, like that. So this human life, so we talked about, to develop power in any field, because we're conditioned souls and we're not God. To develop potency means we do austerity, we do tapas, we give up immediate enjoyment of the senses for longer term fulfillment, for that change of heart. And that's the point. The change of the point isn't mystic powers or material success or accumulating knowledge and showing that I'm intellectual and smart. The actual essence is that change of heart. Vedeshcha sarvara aham eva vedya. Vedantic Veda Evacham, Krishna describes. The goal of all the Vedas describe, whether it's Vedas in the form of Bible or Vedas in the form of Upanishads, the Vedas describe so many paths of mysticism, of cultivation of knowledge, of karma, of go to heaven, of varnashram, and the goal is the change of heart, cleansing the mirror of the heart, above it, in the Vagnanyavapana, changing this so that we're relieved of the burning fire of material existence. And so Srila Prabhupada, directly empowered and guided by Krishna, is giving us a particular process. And Prabhupada emphasizes to not change the principle, not to change Shastra, not to change the principle. And the Acharya, Bhaktisiddhanta said the Acharya makes Shastra. So whatever Prabhupada does, that's Shastra. Whatever Prabhupada does, that's Shastra. I say that because more and more I'm noticing in different places, there are people, I hesitate to say, but people saying, well, let's see if what Prabhupada said it matches Shastra. Just like, Prabhupada is Shastra, at least for me. The Acharya makes Shastra. So Prabhupada's giving us how to apply Shastra, how to apply the Vedas for our time and circumstance, and gives us particular particular forms of austerities, forms of austerity. And of course, as we engage in such, austerities more and more, then they're more and more joyful and feel less and less like giving something up, right? Like say regular principles. Okay, to not eat meat. Well, after a pretty short time, the idea of like, oh, to eat dead, rotting carcass. Oh yeah, that used to be enjoyable because that was my mode of nature. But now that would be miserable. That would be miserable. So as we develop Vishaya Vivartantenya Harasidena, Rasavaja Masopyasa, Drishta Nivartate. So we develop the higher taste, then the natural joy of the soul. Nityasita Krishna Prema, Sajikabunoi, Shravanani, Sudachite, Karye Udai. The natural joy of the soul in love of Krishna emerges as we discipline ourselves, according to the guidance of our current link to the Parampara, Srila Prabhupada. I'll read the verse again. This is Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 2, Text 30. Prayuktan Bojarajaina Maina Kamarupina Lilaya Vyanudatam Stan Bala Kridanakaniba. The great wizards who were able to assume any form were engaged by the king of Bojakamsa to kill Krishna. But in the course of his pastimes, the Lord killed them as easily as a child breaks dolls. Hare Krishna. Thanks for your attentiveness to Srimad Bhagavatam. I welcome at this time any comments or questions. Krishna.
Question.
Okay,
So I heard that the one thing I was hearing is that through the process of Yukta Vairagya, then we can transform whatever it is from Mahamaya to Yogamaya.
Yeah.
And then you were speaking about there's two different aspects of Maya. Is one is like it's Jiva Maya.
Sure.
Jiva Maya. So that's like the illusion that I'm thinking I am. I'm enjoying, or thinking I'm separate from Krishna, or something like that.
Yeah. Or I need this. I need this material thing to be happy. Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. All right, and then there's Gunamaya.
Yeah.
So that's like the actual stuff.
The actual stuff. Yeah.
The actual stuff is made of Maya. So is that transforming from through the practice Yukta Vairagya, transforming from Mahamaya to Yogamaya, is that just on the Gunamaya level, or would that also be on the Jiva Maya level? And I ask that because I think of Yogamaya as something that's like, well, that's Mother Yashoda.
Right.
It has Yogamaya. So for me to try to be in Yogamaya, like, that's perhaps dangerous.
Right.
So I was wondering about this.
Okay. Thanks for that. Yeah. Okay. Thanks for that question, comment from Prabhu. This for those who weren't here earlier in the class related to Prabhu's question. I gave an analogy like if you have a company that manufactures widgets. So the company, say they have an advertising department, and the purpose of the advertising department is to convince people that you not just want this, you need this to be happy and satisfied. So that's one function of Maya, to convince us that we need these external material things to be fulfilled. And then another function of the company is to actually produce the product. So then that's so everything in material nature is made of Maya. So there's different meanings of Maya. we talked about Avranatmi Shakti, like that. So what mine said, when we engage the material energy in Krishna's service, then all the types of Maya become spiritual. And yeah, maybe hearing your question, I think maybe it would be more accurate rather than for me to say Mahamaya to Yoga Maya, but external energy becomes internal energy. Because there's an interesting verse in the Bhagavad Gita 7.14 in Krishna says, Devyesha Gunamaya. He talks about Gunamaya. Devyesha Gunamaya, Mama Maya Dhiratyaya, Mama Vaye Prapajate, Maya Metam Trantite. He says this Maya is very, very difficult to overcome, but one can easily do it if you serve me. Now that whole Gunamaya, he calls it Devyesh, he calls it divine. You know, this is material, so he calls it divine. So Baba gives the example of, like, from the point of view of the one generating electricity, it's all electricity. So from Krishna's point of view, also the material, and it's divine too. This is all divine. So the electricity, it can flow through a heating contraption and produce heat. It can flow through an air conditioning contraption and produce cool air. So it's all electricity in the sense from the electric generating station. There's no difference. So Yoga Maya in the sense of energy, Maya energy that moves us deeper into self-realization. But yeah, it's the same in one sense, but not the same as like the residents of Vrindavan, and they're forgetful of Krishna's majestic position. We want to cultivate more and more understanding of Krishna's majestic position and deepen our enthusiasm to serve him through his pure devotee with devotion. So using Yoga Maya in a different sense there, maybe communicate more effectively if we said that by engaging in Yukta Vairagya, we transform matter into spirit, external energy into internal energy. And from Krishna's point of view, it's all spiritual energy, sometimes flowing through, a machine that makes heat, sometimes flowing through a machine that makes cool. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Any other questions or comments? Anandini.
Yes, Hare Krishna.
Right.
Thank you for your class. I have a question around the change of heart. You mentioned like the essence of human life is the change of heart.
Yeah.
And that the change of heart brings the relief from you said the burning fire of material existence.
Yes.
And I was reading in the first canto about how when we start hearing about Krishna, that like everything that causes misery is removed from the heart, and that material desires are removed from the heart, which cause the misery. And Srila Prabhupada uses the example of the camel that eats thorns and then drinks the blood and thinks it's nice, it thinks it's good, like as an analogy of what we do when we want to get enjoyment from material things or when we are in material consciousness. So I'm wondering, like, how long does this process go on, the purification process? Like, does it come to an end? Is it really the goal that it comes to an end? And also, like you spoke of this book by Teresa of Avila, where she describes, like, also, she really describes the process that happens and like the things that come up in the purification process, like the envy and the resentment. She describes them as poisonous animals. And so I'm wondering, is there a book or anything from Srila Prabhupada or Rupa Goswami or someone that describes like this purification process? Is it, is it like are there different stages that are always the same, or and how long does it go on, or is there something like that? Could you speak about that?
Okay,
If my question is clear.
I think I'm understanding something. Well, yeah, well, like when I've read Teresa of Avila, I've read two of her books, one called The Way of Perfection, the other called Interior Castle. I feel like I'm reading the six Goswamis. Of course, I translated by Prabhupada. I feel like I'm reading the six Goswamis. Even the whole Interior Castle book, it's all based on the analogy of the soul as a diamond. We use that so many times, like that. Prabhupada uses that. And so yes, there's a process, and it's described extensively. It's described extensively in the Goswami literatures, and it's described extensively in Prabhupada's books. And I saw again, reading Teresa of Avila, it seems like, wow, it's just so resonant, even in the details. I could go on and on about which details, but even in the details, even in some of the analogies she uses. So it's different analogies, but okay. For example, Prabhupada often cites the 9-step process described by Srila Rupa Goswami at Al Shraddha Tata. So it's a 9-step process. Teresa describes seven mansions, each with its different compartments. So Adal Shraddha Tata Sadhu, Sangato Bhajana Kriya, Tato Narta Nivritti Shat, Tato Nishta Ujistata, Atasaktistato Baba, Tata Prema Bidanchate. Sarakana Maya Premna, Padobhave Bhavet Krama. So 9 steps, starting with some basic faith. That's like Teresa describes. You're just sort of beginning to enter the first mansion. It's still basically all these reptilian creatures and insects, but you're beginning to enter the first mansion. Okay. And then her 7th mansion corresponds with that prema. She actually talks about the conjugal relationship with God. Okay. It's like so parallel. She talks about, the conjugal relationship like that. Okay. So like if we were to just study in Prabhupada's books, writings, lectures, letters, his commentary on that verse, it's really 2 verses describing the 9-step process. Well, that's it. That one place. That's just one amongst many places. And so it describes the beginning some faith. It's like the first mansion, to use Teresa's language. Okay, then we begin to practice with some seriousness, but still, maybe we're practicing because we want some recognition or we want some relief from material. But then we go to anartha nivritti, and which means pulling the weed from the garden of the heart. And there's so many analogies. Just like if we start to clean a room, we might think, oh, this might take half an hour. But then we start cleaning the house, we go, oh, there's stuff here. So dust piles, old food under the furniture. Oh my God, this is going to take days, So anartha stuff comes up that we didn't even know was there. And that's not a sign that the process doesn't work. That's a sign that the process does work, right? Okay. And sometimes, like in the Safatov courses, particularly advanced course, sometimes like around day 2 or 3, we'll say just like, there's like more gunk and stuff coming up that didn't even seem to be there the first day within ourselves, between the participants. There's more stuff and gunk coming up. I think, are we going backwards? No, it means like we're taking off the surface mask, becoming more authentic, and letting stuff come up that we were pushing down. So anartha nivritti. So I would say the process is eternal. Like, okay, even let's say for Srila Prabhupada or the 6 Goswamis or Mother Yashoda or the cowherd boys or the gopis, they're continuing in a process. Now, their process at that stage, the stage of like prema, mahabhava, the process isn't about becoming free from the modes of material nature, but the process continues about each moment deepening one's love for Krishna, deepening, making even more acute of Yarta Kalatvam, like I don't want to waste a moment outside of Krishna's service. And as Teresa described, and as Krishna's, as Teresa describes, as one goes to those more and more inner mansions, then one is more and more seeing, like, to use her, I'm not doing any service for Jesus, and everyone on the planet is doing more service for Jesus than me, like she describes the Uttama Adhikari. So yeah, there are parallels. Yeah, there are so many places, and I just described that 9-stage process described in the 2 verses by Rupa Goswami. We can look at like if we look at the nectar of instruction, Sri Upadeshamrita, nectar of instruction, those 11 verses, right? So you might say that the first verses are about going through, seeing where I'm attached to idle gossip, seeing where I'm attached to just collecting more than I need in my belly or in my home, seeing where I'm attached to mundane association, and then the book goes on, and we get to the later verses. Then it's no longer about becoming free from gross attachments to matter. It's more and more about expanding the soul's love and desire to serve Sri Radha Kund and like that. So it's always a process in the earlier stages. Then it's a process born of the modes, and then it becomes a process fully driven by Shuddha Sattva, by the internal energy of bhakti. So I don't know if I responded to your question.
Yes, in some ways. Yes.
I mean, I would say the safe consciousness to develop is like, yeah, to set ourselves up that, like, at least for this lifetime, to like this process will continue, and let me be more intense. Let me be more intense today, to use my time and life energy in devotional service than yesterday, and let me set myself up every day. I can say into eternity, but how much do I have connection with that? But yeah, every day, at least for this lifetime, let me be more and more cultivating a healthy fear of Maya, and realizing my weakness and susceptibility to fall into Maya, and more sincere to see the weeds in my heart, and more enthusiastic to serve Prabhupada's mission. Yeah, for this lifetime, there's no complacency. No complacency.
Yes, that's where my mind went to when you were speaking, that actually it can become like I don't know if that's the right word, like a narcissistic endeavor, maybe, to be pure in the heart, to be, and then it's all about me and all about and so anyway, no matter where I'm at in this change of heart process, I can serve.
Yeah.
Srila Prabhupada, Krishna, like other living entities, and so that's, I can make that choice at any time, even if there is resentment in my heart. And then I am at the same time curious to understand more. Like there's this chant and be happy, like that's the advertisement, and that's what I when I started. Oh yes, I want to be happy, so I'll chant. And for a while I was really happy, and then it becomes like an intense process. Like you said, more comes up than I ever thought was there.
Yeah.
And that's not advertised.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. Well, it is advertised if we read Prabhupada's books. He's not hiding anything. And it is chant and be happy. And that's it. So oftentimes we go, well, I'm not happy. So like the not happy part is to the extent that I'm attached to the weeds, and that I'm attached to stay in the fire of material existence, to use another analogy from Prahlad Maharaj, Evam Janam Nipatitam Prabhavai Kupe. He says, like, yeah, I've fallen into a pit of snakes. All this heavy analogy. So to the extent that I'm attached to wanting to be complimented, I'm attached to adoration and distinction and material comfort, and I'm attached to ego, to the extent I'm attached, then I'm not happy. And then the chanting makes us all happy, but it also forces me to look into the mirror of my attachments. So yeah. So like where you went with that, because so this whole bhakti yoga, like Mother Teresa's path, which is completely bhakti, 100% bhakti. So this whole bhakti yoga, it's a very contemplative internal process. At the same time, that can become self-absorption, my process. And so the driving force of the process is like, how do I serve? And to be contemplative, introspective, that's part of service. And then it's like, what's the healthy balance? What's the fine line where it crosses the line to become egotistical? And so that's why Prabhupada gave us a program, sadhana and practical service. And we embrace practical service. Actually, I was just talking to a devotee who's been practicing for like 50 years. And he said he's been, especially since maybe the pandemic started 2.5 years ago, he's been more kind of internal in his own apartment, this and that. And you can see, like, he's chanting, but you can see he in his words, he needs to get out there on Harinam Sankirtan, distribute Prabhupada's books, start sharing Krishna consciousness with people. And he's starting to do that. And now he's feeling the weeds in his heart getting pulled. Because so we get out there, we do, let's call it practical service, whether it's in caring for our family, preaching programs, and discussions like this, preparing prasad, sharing the philosophy. We do practical service, and then we experience that bliss of bhakti, and then the weeds naturally get pulled. And then again, it's always a fine line, because in the name of, I'm out there doing service, and to what extent am I avoiding my internal contemplative process? So, that's there too. There's one devotee, I heard about one devotee who was actually a leader in Prabhupada's movement in the 70s. And then I heard him say to someone he said to, at one point he said, I'm out there on the battlefield sharing the Sankirtan movement. I'm like Arjuna on the battlefield. Arjuna wasn't chanting japa, because this devotee wasn't chanting japa. So he wasn't following the basic guidelines of Srila Prabhupada or current Linkacharya. So in the name of preaching and this and that, he was neglecting his internal sadhana. So it's that kind of growth edge, healthy synergistic integration, contemplation and practical service. Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anandi. You have something?
I just had one quick thing is, you said, was it Bhakti Siddhanta who said that the Acharya
Make Shastra.
Shastra?
Yeah.
Is there more reference about that, or is it just he said that?
I have a reference. I think I could find the written reference. I'm 99% sure it wasn't just like I heard that someone said that someone said. I think it's like it's written in one of his books or a lecture or something. Yeah.
Is that? I'm just curious about that. So is there a shastric reference for that, for the Acharya making Shastra, or is that?
Well, Bhaktisiddhanta said it, so it's Shastra. And yeah, well, it's, you know, it's the time and circumstance principle. So, and that is Shastra. Time, circumstance, person, situation. Yeah, that principle is there in Shastra. So Prabhupada adjusted so many things. He was completely conservative on the foundational principles, and he adjusted so many things according to time and circumstance. And so, it's the time and circumstance principle.
And then just talk about Maya. It's rather technical, perhaps, but I am curious. The throwing and the covering, I don't quite get the distinction between those two. Yeah.
Okay.
Throwing and covering.
I guess my understanding is like, okay, we develop a desire, like, I don't want to serve Krishna. I want to be the center. Okay, so then there's a function of Maya called the throwing potency that says, okay, go into this realm. Go into this realm of existence, this virtual reality. That's the throwing potency. Then there's the covering potency. The Sanskrit for that is avaranatmika shakti. The covering potency is, now that I'm in this realm, the covering potency will keep us there by convincing us that we're happy there.
Okay.
That's my understanding.
Like the throwing potency still active. Like it's not just like a one-time thing. Oh, they threw us, now we're thrown. It's like always active.
That's my understanding.
So like always being thrown.
It's always active. Like we're trying to get out, but then the throwing potency, I don't have much realization of how they constantly work, but my understanding is it's not just a one-time thing.
Okay. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna Prabhus. Jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
Jai.
Hare Krishna.
Oh.